Well, it seems as if we have two prime ministers at the moment, and new Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's supporters are talking about him as the chief executive and the actual prime minister, Liz Truss, as the chairman. And that sense was only strengthened today after the Chancellor gave his statement from the Treasury before his common statement later this afternoon. And in that Treasury statement, Jeremy Hunt said the government is scrapping, quotes, almost all of the mini-budget tax measures, sweeping away the previous mini-budget, which was very much the joint work of former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng and the current Prime Minister Liz Truss. We know from what Jeremy Hunt said this morning that that cut in the basic rate of income tax to 19% due to come in next year rather than in 2024 when Rishi Sunak wanted it, it's scrapped. The basic rate of income tax will now stay at 20p in the pound indefinitely. That will save some money on tax. We also know that Jeremy Hunt has scrapped the 2-year energy price cap. The government announced in the mini-budget that the unit price of electricity and gas would be guaranteed for 2 years for households and 6 months for firms. It will now be 6 months for both households and firms until April 2023, though from April 2023, the Chancellor was keen to stress more vulnerable households would be given some assistance, the extent of which we currently don't know. On top of that, Kwasi Kwarteng's plans to freeze corporation tax at 19%, that is now scrapped, as former Chancellor Chancellor Rishi Sunak wanted back in March. He announced corporation tax will rise to 25p on the profits of companies from next April. That'll be a big blow for a lot of the UK's small and medium-sized enterprises, 6% off their bottom line, and they are a big source of growth. Pretty much the only part of the mini-budget that's been retained, apart from the energy price cap for the next 6 months, is that cut of 1.25% in the national insurance contributions of both households and firms. That accounts for about £19 billion of Kwasi Kwarteng's original £45 billion tax-cutting package. So it's still a significant amount, though I get the feeling the only reason that's been retained is because that legislation has already gone through Parliament. When he spoke this morning in that emergency statement, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said his tax rises, they add up to an extra tax revenue of about £32 billion a year. What's that in real money? Well, that's about 5% of all the tax collected every year. So a pretty chunky increase. And Jeremy Hunt was keen to say, finally, in his statement, I remain extremely confident about the UK's economic prospects as we go for growth. We may or we may not get growth in the next 6 to 12 months. Also, we may or may not have Liz Truss as Prime Minister.